It was 1974, late summer. I remember that because it was my very first day of school. A long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. But I remember it because it's a scary day for a lot of people, right? And I remember walking up and going through and coming down and trying to figure out what I'm going to do. And I run across another young boy, and he's down playing with blocks. I sit down with him, and we start playing with blocks together as 5-year-olds. And that was when I made my first friend. And Tim Mann and I became friends throughout our time there. We played outside of school. We both liked Daniel Boone. And we played. And it was one of the hardest things I had to do was halfway through my first grade year now to find out that we're moving and I have to say goodbye to my friend. Friendships matter. Friendships are important, and yet we often don't think about them because we just think they'll always be there. As we grow older, they grow with greater importance and greater responsibilities if you're going to be a real good friend. But we all need friends. We need people that we can connect to, that matter to us, and we know we matter to them. And so when we turn over here in 1 Samuel and we read about David and Jonathan, we're reading about two young men who understood one another, cared for one another deeply, pushed together in a circumstance that was quite unusual, and yet that only grew stronger despite whatever circumstances were thrown their way. What we read in 1 Samuel 18 happened just after David kills Goliath. And so he's brought into the royal household in a way, and that's where they meet. And Jonathan finds in David someone that he understands, he gets, and that they are just tightly bound together. But right after that, it's not that long, because David goes out and he becomes this warrior. So much so, though, that Saul becomes jealous. And Saul, being Jonathan's father, that put them in an awkward situation. Jonathan intervenes in chapter 19 because Saul's decided he wants to kill him. And Jonathan talks him out of it. And then as another situation comes up once more, Saul throws a spear at David. David flees. And we come to chapter 20, if you will turn there. And at this time, we find that David has said, I've got to go. He's not going to fight Saul. He's getting out of the way of the tension. But what it creates is a situation where two close friends have to say goodbye. They have to separate. And they don't know, despite how close they are for whatever the time, they don't know when they'll see one another again. But despite that, the bond that they had was so strong that they made commitments to one another of being there for the other and each other's families, no matter what. How David and Jonathan handled the situation of a family member really trying to get between them, drive a wedge and cause a problem, and then see how they respond to that, teaches us throughout this chapter about what friendship really is. We're going to go hurriedly through this chapter here this morning and look at how many different ways we can grow in what our friendships can and should be. The first thing I want to note is found in verses 1 through 11. Then David fled from Naioth in Ramah and went and said to Jonathan, "What have I done, and what is my iniquity? What is my sin before your father that he seeks my life?" So Jonathan said to him, "By no means, you shall not die. Indeed, my father will do nothing, either great or small, without first telling me. And why should my father hide this thing from me? It is not so." Then David took an oath again and said, "Your father certainly knows that I have found favor in your eyes. And he has said, 'Do not let Jonathan know this, lest he be grieved.' But truly as the Lord lives, and as your soul lives, there is but a step between me and death." So Jonathan said to David, "Whatever you yourself desire, I will do it for you." And David said to Jonathan, "Indeed, tomorrow is the new moon, and I shall not fail to sit with the king to eat. But let me go, that I may hide in the field until the third day at evening. If your father misses me at all, then say, 'David earnestly asked permission of me that he might run over to Bethlehem, his city, for there is a yearly sacrifice there for all the family.' If he says thus, 'It is well, your servant will be safe.' But if he is very angry, be sure that evil is determined by him. Therefore you shall deal kindly with your servant, for you have brought your servant into a covenant of the Lord with you. Nevertheless, if there is iniquity in me, kill me yourself. For why should you bring me to your father?" But Jonathan said, "Far be it from you, for I knew certainly that evil was determined by my father to come upon you. Then would I not tell you?" Then David said to Jonathan, "Who will tell me, or what if your father answers you roughly?" And Jonathan said to David, "Come, let's go into the field." So both of them went into the field. What is striking about these opening verses is how completely straightforward both of them are with one another. You want good friendships, you need to fill your friendships with openness and honesty. Develop a bond so strong that it can withstand a barrage of negativity, bad things that happen to you, that are around you, things you have to share with one another that are not so fun, but you need to have an honesty about it and be willing not to hide things, but to open up and say, "Here's what's really going on." That's friendship. Because it indicates that we are close enough that we have confidence our friendship can withstand even some of the ugliness of life, even some of the difficulties. That's why it's so important that you make sure you establish in every kind of relationship, make truth its foundation. That truth is what matters. Ephesians 4 verse 25, that we're to put away lying. He says, just entirely, every way and speak the truth with his neighbor. That we can say that and not do so in fear. When we have to kind of make things up or create it up all the time, what does it say about where relationships are? If I have to kind of go out of my way to make it seem better than it is or not tell you certain things, do I really trust you? Don't think so. So you need to trust one another's motives enough to have a frank discussion without any animosity. In Proverbs 27 and verse 17, it says, "As iron sharpens iron, so a man sharpens the countenance of his friend." That is, that there can be some kind of issue, but they use it to strengthen their bond rather than let it pull them apart. But that also means you need to be willing to open up about your fears and your weaknesses. Now, I'm not talking in some kind of just divulge everything kind of way, but when that's relevant and we keep it back, we're not growing and our friendship is probably not as strong as we say. Confess your faults one to another and pray for one another that you may be healed, James chapter 5 and verse 16 says. But see, the problem is that means you have to be open to rebuke. You have to be open to be corrected. And it means you have to be willing to give it. And that can be hard. In Proverbs 27 and verse 6, "Faithful are the wounds of a friend, but the kisses of an enemy are deceitful." Notice in this interaction, Jonathan, you could tell he is a positive, he's going forward, but David says, "No, they're just not telling you anymore because they know we're close. I know you mean well, but this is actually what's going on." And Jonathan accepts that. Okay, then, what do you want to do? It's an honest, deep sharing of my life is in danger from your dad, and I'm talking to you about it. And what they do to move that forward and to make sure that they're still tight at the end, listening patiently even to sad news. Why? Because authentic relationships require authentic interaction. We can make all sorts of claims and saying how we just want to be real with people, but then we end up with kind of meaningless, kind of surface level interactions. This was real. And it shows just how close they were and good friends. Second of all, treat your friendships as a covenant. Verses 12 through 16. Then Jonathan said to David, "Then the Lord God of Israel is witness. When I've sounded out my father sometime tomorrow or the third day, and indeed there is a good toward David, and I do not send to you and tell you, may the Lord do so and much more to Jonathan. But if it pleases my father to do you evil, then I will report it to you and send you away, that you may go in safety. And the Lord be with you as he has been with my father. And you shall not only show me the kindness of the Lord while I still live, that I may not die, but you shall not cut off your kindness from my house forever. No, not when the Lord has cut off every one of the enemies of David from the face of the earth." So Jonathan made a covenant with the house of David, saying, "Let the Lord require it at the hand of David's enemies." To appreciate what they just coveted, they were making a covenant that was guaranteeing Jonathan, who was in line to be king next, knowing he was not going to be king, and he doesn't care. He's happy that David will be king. And he sets up this situation to say, let me check. Is there any last way we can salvage this so we can still be around one another? Let's see what we can do. And so this becomes the plan. You know, sometimes we can accuse acquaintance with friendship. Acquaintances recognize one another and acknowledge some connection. We're here together all in the same building. That's something together. Something the same, something that ties us there. Friends feel a responsibility toward one another. It's not just, hey, how are you doing? See you again next week. But rather there's something there that says this matters. Not where I am that matters, not the fact that maybe some part of this matters, but you matter. That's friendship. David and Jonathan felt bound together by something stronger than proximity. It wasn't just we're just stuck in the same class together at school. It's we belong together, we think the same way, we care about the same things, we are here for one another. True friendship is a type of covenant. And enduring friendship among Christians keeps God and his will at the center of that relationship. Proverbs chapter 12, verse 26, "The righteous should choose his friends carefully, for the way of the wicked leads them astray." In a committed friendship, both people's actions and behavior come to match Christian character. That's part of it. Be ye doers of the word, not hearers only, deceiving your own selves. James chapter 1 verse 22. How can I be a Christian, good Christian friend if I'm going to be the one introducing you to temptation or causing you problems or making fun of things that you do that are trying to please God? How is that being a friend? Isn't that what I should be encouraging? It's that tightness of being there and being understanding that I'm committed to your best interest too. That we protect one another and protect the friendship from accidental harm. Read in Colossians chapter 3, verse 13. He says, forbearing and forgiving one another, even as God for Christ's sake hath forgiven you. You put protections in place so that you can tolerate one another. You're not going to be exactly the same. There are going to be different things maybe that are, you say, well, I wouldn't do it that way. But this friendship matters. And then there can be a situation where this person needs some time and to get some things fixed, and they need to be shown that word here, forgiving. Act graciously. Give them the right kind of opportunities instead of thinking the worst. That should be the foundation for how we build our relationships. If we always think that the other person is going to react horribly, what do we really think of them? Character. You see, for this to work, though, both people must be accountable in that covenant with one another. In Hebrews chapter 10, 24 and 25, let us consider one another, to provoke one another to love and to good works, not forsaking the assembling of ourselves together as the manner of some is, but exhorting one another, and so much the more as you see the day approaching. Keep making the most of it. It is sad how easily people will give up on friendships today. And I think that's probably due to how casually we approach friendship from the beginning. It's no big deal. Que sera, sera. Toss them aside. I'll always get another. God's people should do better. Thirdly, solidify your friendships with genuine love. Verses 17 and 18. Now Jonathan again caused David to vow because he loved him. For he loved him as he loved his own soul. Then Jonathan said to David, tomorrow is the new moon, and you will be missed because your seat will be empty. Sometimes we start off our friendships well, but we have trouble taking the next step forward to what amounts to a lifelong bond. And the difference lies in our willingness to work toward enduring connection by sacrificing time and attention for the other. Just think yourself how great it feels when someone makes time for you. You know that they've taken some time out of their day to do something, to call you, to check on you, or, okay, you need something, that they're available. Now, what they're going to ask you may be different than what they ask me. Things that they need, no one's going to ask me to come over and fix an engine. They're not going to ask me that. And if they did, I'd say no. Why? Because I'm a friend. And I want their car to run. Okay, but you recognize in that you're there. You spend the time, you make the time because you're saying this person matters. And we are in a society, my friends, of where we don't have the time for just about anybody except ourselves. And therefore we don't have time for friendships. David and Jonathan did. But that requires commitment. John 15, verse 13, Jesus as our model. Greater love hath no man than this, than to lay down his life for his friends. But there's more to it than that. It must also include valuing the other person as we value ourselves. That's where you get with Jonathan feeling that David's being king was for Jonathan just as good as if he were king. Think about that. There's no difference here in terms of how he felt about it. In Matthew 7 and verse 12, Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount says, therefore, as you would that others should do unto you, do you even also unto them, and so fulfill the law and the prophets. That means you spend time thinking about what is good for the other person. You have to know them, you have to understand them, and you have to be willing to think about them in order to then do what is best for them. When you can find the good in others that makes being around them refreshing, uplifting, sometimes that can take a while to get to know someone. But when you do that, friendship becomes easier for everyone. Because you've taken that time. Friends then desire one another's company. A beautiful verse we don't see very often, but in 3 John 14, as he's writing, the last thing he wants to say, he's wanting to come to see them so we can speak face to face. I haven't seen Rowan Jones in a few years. How about you? I get to see him soon. I'm looking forward to it. Face to face. We see him on Zoom all the time. Message on Facebook, not the same. Romans chapter 12, verse 10, be kindly affectionate one to another with brotherly love in honor, preferring one another. Why? Because this is a relationship where there is low risk and great reward. There is benefit of what I can get just by being around this person because of what we share in Christ. True friends always gain from being together. You spend time, and some's just enjoying it. Others times are spent really serving the other. But it's because we first value what the other offers, what the other means, and what I've gained that I want to give back. Fourthly, deepen your friendships through spiritual character. We pick up in verse 19. And when you have stayed 3 days, go down quickly and come to the place where you hid on the day of the deed, and remain by the stone Ezel. Then I will shoot 3 arrows to the side, as though I shot at a target. And there I will send a lad, saying, go find the arrows. If I expressly say to the lad, look, the arrows are on this side of you, get them and come, then as the Lord lives, there is safety for you and no harm. But if I say thus to the young man, look, the arrows are beyond you, go your way, for the Lord has sent you away. And as for that matter which you and I have spoken of, indeed the Lord be between you and me forever. Then David hid in the field. And when the new moon had come, the king sat down to eat the feast. Now the king sat on his seat, as at other times, on a seat by the wall. And Jonathan arose, and Abner sat by Saul's side, but David's place was empty. Nevertheless, Saul did not say anything that day, for he thought, something has happened to him. He is unclean. Surely he is unclean. And it happened the next day, the second day of the month, that David's place was empty. And Saul said to Jonathan his son, why has the son of Jesse not come to eat, either yesterday or today? So Jonathan answered Saul, David earnestly asked permission of me to go to Bethlehem. And he said, please let me go, for our family has a sacrifice in the city, and my brother has commanded me to be there. And now if I have found favor in your eyes, please let me get away and see my brothers. Therefore he has not come to the king's table. Then Saul's anger was aroused against Jonathan, and he said to him, you son of a perverse, rebellious woman, do I not know that you have chosen the son of Jesse to your own shame, and to the shame of your mother's nakedness? For as long as the son of Jesse lives on the earth, you shall not be established, nor your kingdom. Now therefore send and bring him to me, for he shall surely die. And Jonathan answered Saul his father and said to him, why should he be killed? What has he done? The difference in the way in which Jonathan interacts with David and how he interacts with his father are telling. And it's sad. The difference is the character that underlies their relationship and what made them come together. David and Jonathan, they're part of Israel, but they come from 2 different lineages. So the bloodlines, pretty much, broadly speaking, they're not connected. And here it is, Saul is his own father. The character of the relationship, though, what mattered to Jonathan was not the bloodline, but the character line. It wasn't what I get out of it upon this earth so much as who I am and who David is. Brethren, grow your friendships based on the spiritual. That's what we see in Jonathan and David. They were tightly knit together because they shared a desire for what was right. In Philemon 1, there Paul talks about Philemon as his true friend. But that means you be there for one another, especially in adversity. Here this situation has come up, and Jonathan is doing what he can for David, even as an ascension emissary, when he knows that Saul is out to get David. He's following David's directions. You know, Job's friends did not get a lot right, but at least they were there. When there's adversity, you need to be there for one another. You've got a problem, you know that somebody's going to be there for you. But do we build our friendships for those moments? Or do we expect them without investing in the friendship? Those kind of friends and what we expect people to be there for us in difficult times, that is not something where we ought to think as an obligation. It's built upon relationship where you can predict who will show up because you know one another. Value your friendships then enough to work on them and fight for them. What are you doing with the people you say are your friends? What are you doing to make that friendship better? Better before God. Better in your soul. So tightly that the person knows that they can count on you and you can count on them. You'll notice that verses 30 through 32, as Jonathan is interacting with Saul, Jonathan's interested in justice, not a kingdom. His concern that he voices is a defense of David. What's he done? It wasn't selfish. It wasn't about him. It was about what was right. In Galatians chapter 2, 11 and 12, Paul confronts Peter and even mentions Barnabas as having been have failed in pulling away from eating with the Gentiles. But he needed to defend what was right. Be a friend who's there for your friend, even when your friend is not there. That you're willing to defend somebody because you know who they are, and you're going to do the right thing, and it doesn't matter if you are the only one in that audience who knows and cares. That's friendship. Number 5. Build friendships that last. Then Saul cast a spear at him to kill him, by which Jonathan knew that it was determined by the father to kill David. So Jonathan arose from the table in fierce anger and ate no food the second day of the month, for he was grieved for David because his father had treated him shamefully. And so it was in the morning that Jonathan went out into the field at the time appointed with David, and the little lad was with him. Then he said to his lad, "Now run, find the arrows which I shoot." As the lad ran, he shot an arrow beyond him. When the lad had come to the place where the arrow was, which Jonathan had shot, Jonathan cried out after the lad and said, "Is not the arrow beyond you?" And Jonathan cried out after the lad, "Make haste, hurry, do not delay." So Jonathan's lad gathered up the arrows and came back to his master. But the lad did not know anything. Only Jonathan and David knew of the matter. Then Jonathan gave his weapons to his lad and said to them, "Go carry them to the city." As soon as the lad had gone, David arose from a place toward the south, fell on his face to the ground, and bowed down 3 times. And they kissed one another, and they wept together, but David more so. Then Jonathan said to David, "Go in peace, since we have both sworn in the name of the Lord, saying, 'May the Lord be between you and me, and between your descendants and my descendants forever.'" So he arose and departed, and Jonathan went into the city. Build your relationship up so it's built for the long haul. One of the things you ought to try to do is know one another so well you can anticipate one another. In Proverbs 17, verse 17, it says, "A friend loves at all times, and a brother is born for adversity." The consistency of character that does not change over time. That's the commitment. But also, fill your interactions with real empathy. Proverbs 18, verse 24. "A man who has friends must himself be friendly, but there is a friend who sticks closer than a brother." Spend time thinking about the other person's position that they're in and caring about it when they're not there. Then, make your friendships meaningful rather than superficial. When you see in verses 33 and 34 the situation with Saul and Jonathan, Saul has just been arguing that Jonathan needs to pay attention so he can be king. What's the next step that Saul does in this progression? He tries to kill him. Well, that's a good way for him not to be king. It was built on ambition. It wasn't even built on family in the traditional sense. Act consistently in a way then that benefits others. In Ephesians 4:32, the comparison verse to Colossians we looked at earlier, be kindly affectionate toward one another, he says, and then why? Be kind, forgiving one another, even as God for Christ's sake has forgiven you. You need to care for people, be kind, developing your relationships, that you're always trying to see what you can do to help the other person. Small ways. But make the most of your time together so that being apart is hard. One of the great verses here in 1 Samuel 20, verse 18. Why? Because he says, you will be missed. Build a bond so strong that no amount of adversity can destroy your friendship. In Job 19:19, it says, all my close friends abhor me, and those whom I love have turned against me. It's really sad when you get in a situation that all of a sudden nobody wants to be your friend anymore. Now, sometimes people will do that to themselves. I'll admit that. But shouldn't the nature of friendship include, even if that person is wrong, that they know I care enough to talk to them about it? I would hope so. Otherwise, everything that's given in Scripture about going to your brother and taking care of your brother would be a farce. We all need friends like Jonathan. But more than that, we all need to be friends like Jonathan, especially for one another. And there is no foundation stronger for true friendship than what you find in New Testament Christianity. All the building blocks are there. But that also means our friendships will have a particular character. You'll be open and honest with one another. You'll be able to count on one another. You will generally care for what is best for the other. You will stand up for one another. And you will tie yourself in mind and heart to one another so much that any absence causes us to ache. Friendships today rarely enter this kind of dimension. But this is what Jonathan's friendship was all about. and what it ought to be for us. Jesus proved himself to be the greatest friend you'll ever have. He was there for you, acting for you, sacrificing for you, caring for you when you'd done nothing for him. When he went to the cross and died, he did so as a sacrifice for all of us. When he rose again, he made a victory possible for all of us. That's a friend. And so when we see in the gospel this call to come to him, he's offering, though, a friendship that is also family. That is someone who became man and to become a brother to you. He wants you to listen to him in faith, repentance, confession, and obedience, beginning with baptism, Acts chapter 2, verse 38. To be a friend to him. There are all sorts of opportunities in this auditorium today for friendship. I know many already exist, and I'm thankful for them. The question is whether or not we are being the type of friend we ought to be to one another and to Christ. If you've never obeyed the gospel, you are missing out on such a great opportunity for people who want to embrace you as a friend and as a family member. Because that's what the Father wants, too. We hope you make that decision. But you as Christians, what's your friendship quality like today? Is it about the same as whether or not you're hiding someone on Facebook? Clicking a like here and there? Just passing over it, scrolling through the day? Or is it someone that you're there for? There's a quality missing in this world of being real, of being genuine in relationship, that Christianity addresses more perfectly than anything else. Let's make sure people see that in us. If you're subject to the invitation, would you please come while we stand and sing?